Hi everyone. I'm Graham. I was on the product analytics team until the AI borrows lately, and I'm now working on the ML ops team on the model registry product. But I have noticed for a while now that a lot of teams are kind of clamoring for dashboarding. And I wanted to showcase some work that myself and Becca and Libor have been doing and collaborating on towards that end. And so what I found was the three of us were kind of trying to reinvent the wheel separately. And once we started collaborating, we were able to come up with some pretty cool stuff. And my hope is that by extending that work to everyone, any teams that need dashboards don't have to start from scratch. And we can hopefully kind of build this bigger, broader vision for dashboarding at GitLab through that. So um, I put in the UX forum notes a lot of, well, all of the resources that I'm showing today. There's a couple epics. There's also Figma files. Um, and I'm going to review a couple of those and then show some of the work I specifically did. But going through it, so this UX theme issue is probably the first stop for anybody who's curious about the work that the three of us were able to do. In this, Libor and I crafted this quite a while ago, but we've been slowly updating it since then. It contains all of we had first prioritized optimize and monitor, and then observability was added later on with Becca's help. But we basically showcase all of our personas that we were working towards on our team, the specific needs from our teams for dashboarding, including jobs to be done, sub themes, things like what does the layout and the hierarchy look like? How does handling data within these dashboards look like? How do we handle data literacy across different personas? Things like that. And we're kind of slowly going through the resources at the bottom are what are also in the notes as well. So if anybody has any questions or if you'd like to contribute to this, please do. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions in the issue as well. The second part of this is through product analytics. Um, we kind of use product analytics as a catalyst to start the dashboarding work. Becca had done these really awesome conceptual maps in observability as well. And so there was this kind of tangential work going on in both groups. And that prompted Lindsay, who is the PM for product analytics, to create this big kind of vision statement for the cross-stage dashboarding that we were hoping to build. And this includes table stakes feature, which were specific to product analytics, but also considered a lot of the stuff that observability was looking for. Um, and contains all of the current and future work that's happening for that. So again, this is an excellent resource for teams that need dashboarding, especially custom built dashboards for their specific groups. Go here instead of trying to figure it out from scratch yourself. This is another phenomenal resource and shows a lot of or contains really all of the work that's happening currently and will be happening in the near future. So yeah, um, the second portion of this is just a quick run through of some of the work that I had done for this effort specifically. So I'm going to share a different screen now. Um, Figma, where are you? So taking all of the information that was in those two epics and kind of putting it into Figma, I created kind of a first pass at a dashboard listing page that had a little bit of the functionality worked out as well. To start, this was our current product analytics dashboard listing when I was on the team. It's super simple. There was not really any metadata that we were showing. It wasn't really scalable. And so what I did was I looked at a lot of the functional pieces and kind of the patterns that we would need in the different or for the different groups and to scale dashboards out for a bigger audience, essentially. So for instance, I looked at the vulnerability report for how things are sorted in the header here. I know there's a pattern for sorting. This was a pattern I was much more familiar with, and I was looking at a couple different options to present, which you'll see in a bit, that uses something like this. I was also looking at value stream dashboards. I really liked the fact that this had spark lines in the tabling. I thought that was a really good use case for, at least for product analytics. One of our personas, or rather, one of the jobs we needed to figure out was what happens if somebody is creating custom dashboards for like a higher report. If they don't want to see more detailed info, they just need to know like, hey, the line is going up or the line had a big dip here or whatever. This was a really quick way to see that, and I thought was really, really good for what we had needed. Um, Within the pipelines table, there were kind of alternate graphics that were shown, like the pipeline progress itself. That was something that I found really interesting, and was incredibly useful for what we were going to need as well. And then lastly, the nested table rows within the group listing and projects listings. This was something that I was exploring as well. So this was just like really quick, what exists in GitLab currently that we could kind of reuse in what we needed for product analytics. I have some previous iterations that we can go over if there's a need, but I basically from that came up with 4 proposals, or rather 3, and then kind of a hybrid. So the first proposal for the listing page was this, what I'd call like expanded view panel. So this is essentially the kind of short list of dashboards. A user could come in and click on more details within the dropdown, and then they would be presented with this panel that expands on the back or on the side, similar to the panel that exists in a project or an issue. Um, the second kind of option was allowing users to expand and contract each of the rows in kind of an accordion view. So they would click the chevron next to the item, and then more metadata would appear. The need for this was driven by having kind of an expansive set of metadata per dashboard, but obviously wanting to create like the most simple user experience before more information was shown. The third proposal was kind of a simplified version of that, where the user could just expand and contract all the rows to show everything at once. So you've got a toggle up here for simple and detailed view, and then the expanded view of all different kinds of metadata that's been added to the project. There could be labels, there could be descriptions, but all of these items could also be missing. This was kind of the third option. And then I came up with a hybrid, which was essentially a mix between the accordion view and the toggling, where you could expand and contract all up here as an option. And obviously, this would happen as needed. Um, Further beyond kind of the listing page, we were looking at functionality. So cloning a dashboard was another kind of key component of this. Being able to go in and clone a dashboard from the listing and from the dashboard page itself. So the user would choose a new title, and then some way of showcasing that, hey, this is a new dashboard that you just created. You can now go in and edit it. And then kind of a different experience if they're within a dashboard. This was a super rough wireframe of what a dashboard might look like, but they would click clone in the more actions tab. They would choose a new name for it, and then all of the new kind of information, they would be on the new page of the newly cloned dashboard and be able to edit it right away. You can see in here too some of the other things that are hinted at in the issue, or in the epics rather, where we were looking at needs for having specific permissions per dashboard, and then working through some of the functionality of what happens if a user tries to edit or clone a dashboard that was created basically by GitLab. Those were not editable by default, and so we needed a way to allow users to clone them in order to kind of create their new dashboard using those as a template. But same with a dashboard that might have been shared with them from somebody else, and then being able to kind of tailor it to their own needs. Um, so this is one of the kind of examples of this that exists. As I said before, Becca has another amazing exploration of this for observability's needs. And Libor had done some work as well on this kind of effort. Um, that's kind of all I have. I know a lot of teams had a ton of questions about dashboards, and there was a lot of like kind of technical background that was driving some of the decisions I made in this file. So I'm more than happy to answer questions. But I just kind of wanted to point out all those resources for teams that are looking at building their own dashboards so that maybe we can kind of create some sort of unified vision for them rather than I think what the three of us kept running into, which was we were kind of designing the wheel on our own all over again. And so, yeah. I'm going to look. So it looks like Austin has a question. Our admin area dashboard has some stats that are super old. I assume these data points aren't actually all that insightful. So one of our goals with the UX theme issue was to basically create this kind of list containing all of the needs, I guess, of each of the different groups. So obviously, observability has really specific needs. Security dashboard would have super specific needs that were probably very different from what something like product analytics would need to serve users. So I would, if this is something for the kind of if this is a need for a dashboard, I would absolutely encourage you to add it to the list because what I don't want to happen is us to create kind of this prescriptive version of what a dashboard should be and have it not fit the needs of a specific team. Um,
Yeah, and this honestly might even be like the wrong avenue to Graham. It's just I've
hmm,
noticed like literal the dashboard page in the admin area, which you could probably argue whether or not it's actually a dashboard. Yeah, it's one of those areas that's not specifically owned by somebody. So like it just kind
hmm,
of has sat there. Like if you look at the commit history, like DZ made like these commits like 7 years ago, and maybe some polishing has happened a little bit. I'm like, these deep data points probably aren't that helpful. I wonder if like
hmm.
this type of um influence from your team could help bring more insightful data points to an administrator. Like I don't think they really care how many notes have been generated. We have a list of
Yeah,
features that are on or off. Are they actually the most important features? I don't even know. Um, it's just like it feels like we wanted to start creating a dashboard feel to give an administrator insight over their instance, and we
hmm,
just kind of lost sight of making sure that that data was actually relevant and useful.
hmm.
So yeah, I was just kind of curious if that was something up your team's alley. Happy to add that as an opportunity potentially to make an impact.
I think one of the other kind of key components of our work, at least, because we were looking at this broader vision, but we had specific needs for product analytics. But a huge kind of thing that kept coming up was um, dashboards currently are in like 100 places on GitLab. There's a ton of the navigation, especially within analytics, is devoted to all sorts of different dashboards, where when you visit them, there is information that is probably not super useful. It might be useful to one specific person, but is there a world in which we create something that's a little more custom and a little more dynamic to the person who's approaching it. So somebody being able to build their own dashboard from the data that they specifically need was um, a huge need basically for the project. So in something like this, if they're able to um, drill into these items for more detailed information, but staying within the dashboard, or if they're even able to build a dashboard that's custom to the things that they need to look at and the things that they need to address pretty regularly, I think that would be incredibly useful. So I'll definitely take a look at this. And yeah, I appreciate the feedback on that. Um,
Graham, I have the next one. I'm
mhm,
just thinking about dashboard. So the ones that you were showing look like they were all customizable. If the dashboards we're dealing with are not customizable,
mhm.
should they still belong in that list?
Yeah, so there's quite a few controls on the list, and let me share that screen again really quickly. We thought a lot about that in terms of there is usefulness to those dashboards. And the ones that are created by GitLab are essentially the ones that are set in stone. So we wanted to enable people to be able to clone them to then customize them if that was a good template for them to start with. But in the current version, those would not be editable at all. That being said, we had a bunch of controls through tabs essentially to go between people's favorites, the ones that they had created or ones that had been shared with them, perhaps, but also the ones specifically created by GitLab. So those kind of have that permanent home
Okay.
for that specific reason.
And then I'm just thinking about like personas. As you said, there's so many dashboards across all of our teams,
Mhm.
but also our teams are targeting different personas. Um, do we know if everybody's are we expecting them to know to discover all the dashboards in this one place? Because that been, I guess, validated in a way.
So the jobs to be done for product analytics at least was still kind of underway when I switched to ML ops, or model ops. That's a great question though, and something that we will probably need to look at. So I'm gonna take note of that because I think you bring up a good point. Like, how is somebody gonna specifically know that all of these are here now? And I would imagine we would probably do a pretty intense study on that before we would release this as like one home because it would affect a lot of the navigation bar.
Right.
Especially like I said, within analytics, like half of those options are dashboards. So taking that out would be a huge kind of change in the mental model of what people are used to expecting. But I'm
Right.
definitely going to take a note of that. Thank
Okay.
you.
And also I mean, I think there's plenty of ways that we could implement these into people's workflows with
Mhm.
like linking them or whatever it happens to be. So I'm not saying that there's no way to do that. I'm
Mhm.
just interested if there's research.
Not specifically. Becca and I had done kind of a almost like a thought exercise on what if we went and changed GitLab entirely to like a dashboard first approach, where a dashboard was the homepage, but that was more of like a really quick kind of conceptual exercise, and it was interesting, but yeah, we would definitely need to kind of do our due diligence on that, especially for the nav changes. I know those come with a lot of scrutiny, understandably so. So we would for sure be pursuing that.
Awesome. Thank you, Graham. I'm going to end the recording since we are at time.